Hey everybody, JP here. And yeah, today we are going to talk about some Garage Inc. guitar tones by popular demand. A lot of people asked me about this after the Load guitar tone video from a couple weeks ago. We're going to really focus on James' Wizard guitar sounds, his Wizard Modern Classic head that he started playing somewhere around 97. I believe he started incorporating that into his rig. I think it replaced the rectifier in his rig. At least in the studio, somewhere on the Reload sessions, and then it was featured very prominently on Garage Inc. on all the new tracks they cut for that. Actually, that intro, that riff, Into the Coven from the Merciful Fate medley, it's actually blended with the Triaxis, 2C plus mode on the Triaxis for that one. We're going to get back to that later. First, we're going to talk about the Wizard amp itself. I'm not sure exactly how James came upon it, but when I was trying to figure out how to do this video, I started looking at options, and there are not a ton of Wizard amp sims out there. But then I found one that's sort of, it's a capture, and it's free. So I'm going to link it below. It is the Neural Amp Modeler. So this is a free plugin, VST3 plugin. And then there was a whole bunch of captures, and I'm on the Wizard lead clip capture for the sound. And as you see, there's a bunch of them that have pedals incorporated. There's a lead without the clip, and there's a rhythm with the clip. And we'll give all of them a listen in a little bit. But I just wanted to mention that, this is, free plugin. I'm using it within the Wavesverse Studioverse wrapper here. And then I thought I would use another free plugin, and I'm using the Brainworx Mega Single with the preamp bypassed and just the power amp on. So did play around with some IRs with it. I found a couple that I really liked. I believe James' Wizard cabinets are all loaded with greenbacks. Rick from Wizard only offers, I believe, greenbacks or Celestion Alnico options in his cabs. And some of these English 4x12 IRs in the Brainworx Mega Single, they just kind of sound right with the Wizard amp captures. Now, for the first time in years, really, James used an overdrive boost on his rhythm sounds with the Wizard. And the two pedals that are mentioned most are a Love Tone Brown Source and a Klon Centaur. And I'm not sure which he used first or which he used on the album, but you could get similar tones with both. So I wouldn't even call it a clone, I have a wonderful recreation of the Love Tone Brown Source. Actually, first we should talk about some Love Tone history, because they were one of the first really out there boutique pedal companies. I mean, they came out in 95. The only boutique pedals you really knew about in 95, at least the only ones I knew about, were Full Tone and Prescription Electronics. That was about it. They were the only ones you saw in stores that early. Love Tone started around that same time, but they didn't really become known in America. They're from England. They didn't really become known in America until the late 90s. And I only found out about them because the studio I worked for, my first studio job, Showplace, the owner was good friends with Joe Barresi. And anytime Joe recommended a piece of gear, Ben would try to acquire it for his studio. So he ended up getting a Love Tone Meatball, and I think it was maybe a Doppelganger or a Wobulator. I forget which. He might have had them all at some point. But these pedals, this was like outboard gear in a pedal. This was so ahead of its time. And, now there's companies that do, really advanced things in even smaller format packages, but these were way ahead of their time. And along with like the Little Labs PCP distro box, you could patch them in like outboard gear on a mix session. And that's how, Joe was doing mixes like that back then. And, Ben started getting into that as well. Really, really cool pedals. They also made two smaller pedals, more conventional, I guess you'd call them, the Brown Source Overdrive and the Big Cheese Fuzz. Now, eventually they merged those two pedals together into a larger enclosure, and you got something called the Cheese Source. And the cool thing about this is that it was, identical to the individuals. It even had separate ins and outs if you wanted to run them individually. So I have a recreation of that by a great company called Artisanal Effects from Winnipeg, Canada. It's called the Cheddar Source pedal. And just like the original, you got separate ins and outs. I know it's confusing because the Brown Source controls are on the right and the I/O for it are on the left up top, but just trust me on that. We're not using the Big Cheese side, the fuzz side at all. We're only using the Source Overdrive. So you've got drive, tone, and volume controls, all pretty self-explanatory. You see there's a little four-way switch, and what that does is it changes the width of the tone control. So number 3 would be the narrowest, kind of like an upper mid peak happening. And then as you go to the left, you get more low mids and low end. And then when it's off, the tone control is completely bypassed. So I have it in position 1, which is like the most mid-range and low end while still keeping the tone active. And I think it sounds fantastic. And then, yeah, at some point, James also started using a Klon Centaur, and the Klon actually made its way into James's live rig for quite a while. It actually replaced the old Morley power wah that James had rack mounted, and he used it in a fixed position for a lead boost when playing live in like the late 80s, early 90s. So the Klon took over those duties. In fact, he still uses a model of it in his current rigs. The Klon, I believe, it was when he was hanging out with Warren Haynes. He got turned onto the Klon because Warren had been using that for a couple of years. Klon came out kind of around the same time. I think it was 94. Bill Finnegan up in Boston came up with that idea. And you can go on TGP and find, 10 threads about it right now. So, I mean, there's no shortage of talk about the Klon, so I'm not going to get too into that, except that we are using 2 Klon examples that we're going to talk about. And this one's free. This is the Nembrini Minotaur, and this is a free download. So you can get these wizard tones completely for free. And that's the reason I wanted to include this. And then I've also got the Mixwave Centurion. So we're going to play around with all these. They all kind of can get the same job done in slightly different ways. So now let's talk about a sound that is 100% wizard, and that would be the Sabracadabra main riff. So this is our version of it with the brown source. That's without. See, puts a little spice on the top. And for comparison, I could not find a lot of stems from this album. So really the Merciful Fate medley was the only true stem I could find. Some of the others were AI generated. They didn't sound very good. So for Sabracadabra, I lucked out. I was able to loop just the main riff for comparison purposes. But unfortunately, yeah, we don't have the rest of that. I found a couple IRs. I kind of go back and forth between which ones I like best. They're all greenback based. This is another one I like too. I think both AIRs have qualities of the original, and I can't seem to find one that's 100%, but I'd say, we're about as close as we got with the load sound, so I'm pretty happy with that. Actually, another thing I want to do is show you what the brown source sounds like by itself. So first, that's the brown source. See how it thins out a little bit when you go to the right. You can really push the amp with the volume, but I don't want to clip my converters right now. So I thought that sound worked best. And then, just to show you the different options we have for these captures, that's the Wizard lead. That's I guess that's a mud killer, some sort of boost pedal. I'm not familiar with that one. Wizard clip. Wizard lead clip was my favorite. I'm not going to go through all these, but rhythm clip. I actually thought the sound was really cool. Not for this purpose, but kind of a good vintage sort of clipping sound. And sounds good with the pedal too. And just ignore this. I was playing around with some IRs, but that's deactivated right now. So now we've got basically the same signal over here, same settings, same IR, but with a couple of Klon plugins. This Mixwave Centurion puts out a lot more level, so I have it backed off a bit compared to the other one. By comparison, here's the Nembrini. I've got the output turned up quite a bit on the Nembrini. I calibrated all these, as you know, I've done in the past. So I think they both sound great. The Nembrini's free. Tough to argue with free. Of course, you can stack them both. Gets a little fuzzy. And I've got them both going through Neve 1081s, just assuming that's what was used to record them. And then I've got an SSLE channel on the guitar bus, along with Studer 800. Pretty standard stuff that I've been doing on all these videos. So now let's talk about blending it with the 2C Plus from that Merciful Fate medley. Okay, that's our 2C Plus tone with the Nembrini. Same as the load video. And that's with the Wizard added. Same settings on the Wizard, lead clip mode, same settings on the Brown source. Different IR, but similar. Still one of the greenback IRs. I just thought this one sounded a little better. And Neve 1081s as well. And I did have to play around with the little labs a little bit. They were phasing a little bit there. I think there's a little added latency due to the studio verse and the possibly the Brown source being on a hardware insert. Nothing we can't compensate for though. Little labs is just killer. That's the Wizard by itself for the sound. That just sounds fantastic to me. And that's without the Brown source. And I had it down to somewhere around here. So yeah, really digging these sounds. This was something fun to get into, and I'm really glad I found a decent, capture of a Wizard, because there really just isn't much of that. Rick might not be a fan of that. He might not license out, like so many other companies do. But yeah, came across this one again. I will link it in the description. Great stuff to have in your arsenal. And being VST3, you should be able to use it in pretty much anything out there. And yeah, I hope you guys dig this. I know I got a lot of requests for the Garage Inc. sounds, and I had never really gotten into them before myself, but I do agree they sound great. I wish there were more stems available. I would have loved to have gotten into like Whiskey in the Jar or Turn the Page or something like that, but just didn't really have the tools to work with to do what I like to do with those, unfortunately. But yeah, this was a lot of fun as always. All right, guys, so I'll be back soon. I had mentioned maybe doing a little Mystery Science Theater 3000 version of A Year and a Half in the Life of Metallica, and I think I will. I think I basically edited it down to just the studio footage, and I'm just going to kind of go through it and pause it in spots and talk about what's happening in the videos and what gear I see being used and things like that. And I think that'd be a lot of fun, kind of like the Load Studio notes. And by the way, if anybody has the Black Album Super Deluxe box with the book inside, let me know if there are studio notes in that, because if there are, I would love to get into that for you guys. That would be a blast. That would be like a dream come true, actually. All right, so until then, please like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Thanks, guys. Bye.